of course, we just felt like more puffed up, and we just thought that we were the best. And we didn't connect with people from other churches. Like, we didn't like associate with them. We spent our time with people only in our church and people who wanted to, be a part of our church.
So, in regards to the others who were a part of the 12, what was that dynamic?
Um, I would say abusive.
Okay.
Um, Most everyone that was on the 12 when I initially got on has most of them have left that organization.
Mm.
Some have left the faith completely. Some are like tiptoeing, like maybe, I want to get involved with the church again. Um, it's hard. Because the leader is so two-faced.
Mm.
What you'll see on a Sunday stage is not at all what you'd see in the Life Group 12 meetings. They would say, this is kitchen talk, and that was really an excuse to be verbally abusive if we weren't meeting expectations.
Okay.
Not only that, like Dulce was saying, like unhealthy loyalty. It's like there were so many unhealthy things that went on in those meetings. Like, for example, we were asked like how often we had sex with our spouses. It's like no boundaries whatsoever. Not only that, but we actually had to give a report at the 12 meetings on who was at church previous Sunday, why they weren't there. And so we were literally keeping tabs, a leash on everyone that we were leading. Incredibly unhealthy environment.
Mm. My goodness. I haven't heard that term kitchen talk before. Was that used in reference to, for example, that question you said you were asked about your very personal details of your marriage?
Yeah, so I'm not familiar with the term outside of their organization, but
Mhm.
it's a way that like they would just communicate. This is where we pull out boxing gloves. This is where we just have the real conversations.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah,
When I think kitchen, I would think like cooking and chatting and baking, kind of hanging out. It'd be more like comfortable. And I wasn't sure if they kind of used that dynamic to make people share more than they otherwise would have, if
no,
that was the tactic. So no, it was more
no,
like gym, more like
yeah,
at the gym kind of.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like pull no punches, no holds barred. We're gonna tell you how it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they were speaking into every area of your life, even to that degree.
Yes.
Okay.
Literally every single area of our lives we submitted to the pastors.
Okay.
There's no exceptions.
And so when you were still a part of it and the others were still a part of it and you were all in this together, how did that impact your relationships with one another? Because I could see that going in a couple
Yeah.
different directions.
Yeah, so there's a few pieces to that. One, if you're familiar with like how MLMs or pyramids work,
Mhm.
it's called crosslining, downlining, and uplining.
Mhm.
We had similar verbiage, and
Okay.
so if we ever had any major like personal issues, we definitely were not allowed to take it downline at all. We were encouraged to
Mhm.
take it upline. There's certain things that we could take, crossline, but the huge problem lies here. It's like I didn't have any friends. Like
Right.
there's only one person I could take my real problems to, and he had 12 other people. He had businesses he was always doing, so he wasn't always available. He genuinely he tried to be, but there's only so much you can do. And
Mm.
then all the other 12s were too busy with their downlines. And then it was discouraged to have friendships with people outside of the organization. And so I had no friends whatsoever. Um, but I would say, these are my brothers who I do life with, but really I would just see them during, church meetings, during serving, Sunday events, all of this stuff during our 12 life groups. I was really lonely. I remember I was always telling my wife, it's like, I have no friends. It was miserable. Um, but then the dynamic would obviously take a big change if one of those 12s left, because over the years, more and more would leave. And then the pastor would say things like, Even Jesus had his Judas, just because they simply wanted to leave the church.
Mhm.
And so we shunned people who we called brothers for years. One of my best friends right now, um, I'll say his name, Daniel. Like, I love this guy so much. Um, he was on the 12 with me, and when he left, he was one of the people that the leader called Judas. I didn't talk to him for 7 years. Like, he was a huge part of my life.
Mhm.
And we didn't reconnect until after I left, and he gave me a call, and it's like, I this person I loved so much,
Mhm.
I had no contact with, yeah, for 7 years.
Yeah. Yeah, the pain in that, because it wasn't ultimately for a purpose. Yeah, and that is the evil that can come out of this is divisiveness. It's not really about unity at all, is it?
Mm-mm. If I may, you mentioned unity. Unity was really important to the leader, but it was unity within that church, within those teachings. There
Mhm.
was no unity of the body outside of that. I mean, there's even times when I would hear him say, I'm not even sure if these other pastors in town are even saved. It was really just like, we have it, and if anything comes from outside, it's an attack. It's causing division. We need to be unified in our little core here.
Yeah. So did that give the two of you this sense of elitism, that the two of you had something that everyone else needed, shouldn't, doesn't have, and you guys do? How did that impact you?
Yeah, I definitely feel that when we were like in leadership. So I wasn't part of the 12, just to clarify. Derek was. I was the life group leader, but like my direct life group leader was part of the 12, if that makes sense. I
Okay.
know there's lots of ups and downs
She
and
was 3 tiers down.
yeah.
Okay.
And so like when I would see people going to like another popular church in town, it's like I wouldn't really celebrate with them because I felt like, oh, like they went there instead of here because we
Mhm.
just assumed that we had the best vision, the best strategy for winning people. We thought that we had it all. And I mean, and we were always kind of told things like, oh, well, we're the first ones in town that, that filled up this stadium or whatever in our town. And so, of course, we just felt like more puffed up, and we just thought that we were the best. And we didn't connect with people from other churches. Like, we didn't like associate with them. We spent our time with people only in our church and people who wanted to, be a part of our church.
Um,
Mhm.
so a way to kind of push this point forward more, um, just as an example, so I had a guy in my life group. I was a life group leader as being a 12. I was a life group leader, and he wanted to play Star Wars Risk with his old youth pastor,
Mhm.
and I discouraged him from that because there was no quote fruit in it. Now I want to kind of break down how they described fruit and how they discourage people from hanging out with people from other churches or that were not bringing people to the church.
Mhm.
So he would say, why does God hate homosexuality? He says it's because it doesn't bear fruit. Therefore, if you have a relationship with someone who goes to a different church or someone in our church who's not producing fruit, you're in a homosexual relationship. And I literally cut people out of my life because I thought that I was practicing homosexuality by being friends with them when they weren't bringing people to the church or when they went to a different organization.
There are so many things wrong with that. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that speaks to the extreme to which someone's willing to go. Yeah. So, gosh, because I even think of how that would influence how someone would treat someone who is same sex attracted. It's like, so it's again, it's a mess in every direction.
Mhm.
And yet, I want to make sure you guys hear me, and it has to apply to me too, right? Because I've been through it. We just don't know what we don't know when we're in it, and so there's so much after. I know the conversation of forgiveness oftentimes comes up, and I'm like, I think it can come up way too soon. But for myself, I did hit a point where I looked back and I'm like, gosh, now I know why I did the things that I did, and I don't think I'm fully accountable 100% in every way because of the indoctrination I received and the fear tactics and all of this stuff. And yet I feel so bad. And so I want to apologize. And so there's sort of there's a mix to it of like, well, I don't know, I get why I did it, but I still did it. And so I'm so sorry, and just seeking that reconciliation when possible. And again, I think it's just a part that eventually came up in my life, and it took time again to get there, because there were so many steps before that of, first of all, what even was that, and then the grief associated with it, and then the acceptance of what it was. And then part of forgiveness for me has included, okay, well, who's God? Because when I forgive, I'm also entrusting perfect justice and perfect mercy to God. And so I've got to know who in the heck he is too. And I've got to trust him. So it's like, there's all these levels that go along with it, or layers that go along with it. But ultimately, I just want you guys to hear from me as you're sharing. I've done awful things to people, and I get that combination of, it's not all me. I think there's some co-responsibility, and sometimes maybe even more on behalf of others. But gosh, it just feels awful. And so to be able to reconcile, like with your friend Daniel, it's so beautiful. And it makes me happy for you that he was also open to that as well. And like, God bless you both for it.